The row over allegations of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party took another twist this week when Jeremy Corbyn's brother Piers sent out a tweet stating that Zionists can't cope with anyone supporting rights for Palestine. That prompted a rebuke from the president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, Jonathan Friedland, complained that the word Zionist was being treated as if it was some kind of term of abuse by circles on the far left. So what does it mean? Jonathan Friedland writes for The Guardian and the Jewish Chronicle, and I asked him about the origins of the term.
It's been used probably in the way we understand it now since the middle or late part of the 19th century, where it referred to the movement of Jewish nationalism, the Jewish yearning for self-determination that felt itself to be alongside other almost romantic nationalist movements of the same period. The word itself was in some ways the obvious one because the biblical liturgical term that Jews will have used in synagogues around the world even this weekend was Zion, meaning the abstract Jewish homeland.
At the time, all sorts of ideas were kicked around, as I recall, of a Jewish homeland in bits of Africa, bits of Latin America. But Zionism came, did it not, to symbolise or to mean quite specifically a Jewish homeland in what we now call Israel?
That's right. So I think probably historians would want to call earlier movements Jewish nationalist movements. If you were a Zionist rather than just any other Jewish nationalist, it meant you saw the Jewish homeland as being in Palestine. Now, I think probably if you're using it, I think you're referring to it to mean one is no more or no less than somebody who supports the existence of a Jewish home in Palestine. Where that home is, what its exact borders are arguments within Zionism, if you like. And the best description I've heard is by the Israeli novelist Amos Oz, who says that Zionism is a family name. You need a modifier, a first name in front of it to know what kind of Zionist someone is, because you can have a moderate, liberal Zionist, you can have a socialist Zionist, religious Zionist. Those people will all have arguments about what shape and size and content this Jewish state in Palestine should be, but that there should be a home at all, that makes you a Zionist. And it's partly why I tend to almost never use the word now myself, because it's so misunderstood that it's actually become almost functionally useless as a word. People think it means you support what the Israeli government did yesterday. That's a complete misunderstanding of the term.
But just to confuse things further, you referred earlier to religious Zionists, which I take to mean, for example, settlers who believe that land was given to them by God. And that despite the fact that originally most Zionists were secular.
The very first modern political Zionists were, if anything, anti-religious, because the religion had taught until the mid-19th century that the return to Zion was something that was the work of God alone. And if anything, it was an act of usurpation for the Jews to take themselves. The experience of the Second World War and, of course, the Holocaust, if you like, converts the Jewish world to Zionism, because Zionism is seen to have very glumly have won the argument, because it's been saying it's impossible for Jews to live permanently as a minority around the world. We need a place of our own. And therefore the Jewish world shifts. But Jewish religion doesn't shift entirely. To this day, ultra-Orthodox Jewish religious communities often stand against Israel and Zionism. But there was this shift, and it did even happen among religious Jews who slowly got their heads around the idea that they could, rather than waiting for God's will, they could give God's will a nudge, if you like.
And if you want to avoid getting embroiled in the sort of conversation we've just had, don't use the word, I suppose.
Unless they're speaking really about this historical or philosophical argument, I think it's not a useful word, and it can sometimes have a rather ugly connotation. And that's because Zionism has become, in part, a kind of bridging code word that enables people to get from attacking or criticizing Israel to hinting at a wider global Jewish force that sometimes is a bit shadowy and sinister. And that is the traditional anti-Semitic idea of a global Jewish conspiracy. And therefore, it's a word that carries so much baggage, it's almost collapsing under the strain.
Jonathan Friedland talking to me earlier. This year